I think the big news to really focus on after the transfer window, after all the chaos of the first few weeks in the Premier League, I want to focus on some of the biggest surprises so far, maybe some predictions that you guys want to change. And Nick's already done this on the site on Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com. We have the preseason predictions, table standings 1 to 20. How do we want to change those? And I'm going to start with what has surprised me the most so far, and I'll go to you guys. But first and foremost, I want to get this in. The thing that surprised me the most is how good Everton are this season. I knew they were going to be good. We all kind of were talking about them top 6, but I think I've seen enough of them early in the season to suggest they could be top 4 potential. I'm not going to go as far as saying, far-flung things like they could be title contenders. I still think that's way too early. But with that midfield reboot, Decore, Allen, and then James Rodriguez pulling the strings, I know we talked about them a lot, but they have, for me, gone far and above their expectation levels early in the season. And if they can stay solid defensively, they've got Calvert-Lewin actually finishing off chances and, channeling his inner Inzaghi to just one-touch finishes in and around the box, which has been brilliant for Everton and for England now, getting off the mark over the international break. But I've been most surprised by Everton, and I know Toffee's fans everywhere will be absolutely delighted that finally they seem to be exceeding their expectations rather than just meeting them or being well below them. So that's been my biggest surprise. Nick, what about you, mate? What's surprised you the most so far?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one, first of all. And again, the one thing we can't overlook, Everton doesn't have European football. So whereas Liverpool, after the derby, has to worry about going to the Netherlands to face Ajax, Everton has to worry about Liverpool. So that's something really to keep an eye on. Man City for me. Look, I buy the no preseason a little bit, but you can, especially when you consider United struggles, but still pretty surprising. The joke has always been with Man City. Anyone would score atop that attack, right? But 0 minutes from Aguero, 90 minutes out of Gabriel Jesus, who has a goal. That's the only one out of a center forward. The margins are still closer, right? But they're still number 1 in possession, 0.1% off the passing lead, second in shots per game. What's the difference? I mean, maybe we have overlooked how good Aguero and to an extent Jesus have been. So that's my thing. I'm really surprised by Man City. I don't think the wheels are coming off, but enough people who I think have really smart opinions say that to make me wonder if there's smoke, if there's fire under the smoke.
And Delat coming in as off the bench as a youngster, that's the only real option they have apart from rotating Sterling and others up top. So surprised, maybe a bit unlucky.
Yeah.
Bit unlucky early in the season with injuries, but maybe it shows that they don't quite have that squad depth that we all thought they did, especially in that one position. And they have been unlucky with injuries the last few years, haven't they? When you think about Laporte going down, and then other, left back issues.
De Bruyne the year before, yeah.
Exactly. So, but that's a good one. That's a good one. Andy, what about you? What surprised you the most so far?
Yeah, I'm mildly surprised by both of those. Everton, I think more so than City, the injuries for City just kind of have debilitated them just a little bit. I think just about any team would suffer. Real quick, I'll go back and read what I said about Everton prior to the season. I don't think that I was wrong come the end of the season. I am shocked that they've started this way, though. The question from Nick was, what's stopping Everton from being a bona fide top 6 contender? And my response was, don't take this the wrong way, Everton fans. But the answer is, they're Everton. So, a bit harsh, maybe. I think they'll fall back a little bit to the pack by the time, we get to the midway point of the season or so. But Ancelotti's obviously done very well. And we've talked about James Rodriguez every single week here. I think the most shocking thing is kind of the upside down nature of the table at the moment. You've got 3 of the top 6 sides sitting at the top of the table with Everton, Aston Villa, and Leicester. And then you've got the 2 Manchester clubs down in 14th and 16th place in the table. I think just about who you would expect there in the relegation zone, but everything just seems to be flipped upside down. And I kind of wonder if the strangeness of this season is going to be somewhat of an equalizer for some of these smaller clubs. And Nick mentioned the fact that, teams not having European competition to contend with, that this season, more than ever before, might be the biggest difference and kind of level the playing field for some of these smaller clubs. And actually, we should have seen this coming. I think that someone from kind of that mid-table just outside the top 6 would make a big jump up this season because of that advantage. They're going to compact a season into 7.5 months whereas it usually takes 9 or 9.5 months. That's a major deal if you're then flying off to the continent once every other week for 3 months, as you do during the group stage. You go through, you've got even more games in the knockout round. So it's really going to, I think by the time we get to probably March or April, we're going to look at some of these top 6 sides, the top 6, the big 6, and say, they might run out of gas. They might not get over the line. They might have to win Champions League or Europa League if they fall down into it to get into Champions League again next season.
Yeah, I think this has got like a transitional vibe around it with a lot of the big teams spending big, rebuilding, and almost that 2015-16 sort of season where Leicester finished, obviously won the title. Southampton, West Ham were up there all season long. Teams that really struggled, Chelsea and Liverpool those seasons. Yeah, really interesting. And I also want to say the fact that there's been no fans so far, no crowds. It's not as intimidating for some of the smaller teams to go to the big clubs and get a result and be like, you know what? We're going to attack. We're going to go at these teams. We're going to play our game. So that's definitely, some of the weirdness early in the season we can put down to that. Let's see if it's going to carry on. Okay, next, I want to say, not that we're advocating for anyone to lose their job or whatever, but pick one manager who is under pressure already. Andy, I'm going to come to you first with that one. Who do you think's on the hot seat?
So I mentioned this, I think it was 2 weeks ago, or was it 1 week ago? Either way, Pep Guardiola is in just kind of an odd situation for him. And I think the phrase you used there, Joe, was perfect. A time of transition, not only for City as a club, but for Pep as well. This is kind of the MO of his managerial career, is 3, maybe 4 years, really good, maybe not quite get you over the line to win the Champions League, unless he's got Lionel Messi and Xavi and Iniesta and all those. But Rebecca Lowe on the lowdown last week, after they lost to Leicester, made a really, really interesting point. And it's the second time that the studio crew has done that around City in a couple weeks. It was Robbie Mustoe first, but she was asked, do you think that Pep will be there at the end of the season? And she said, I don't think he will. And you could tell that it was very difficult to get those words out, but she didn't. She thought that kind of on his own accord, that given the way that the season was going, where the project was headed, what was going to be required going forward, I think being probably, the impetus for that he might just walk away at some point this season. If it gets to a certain point where he realizes, all right, this is no longer a now project, this is a rebuilding project. And he's never done that. He has never done that. He's taken over a soon to be all-time great team at Barcelona. He took over a 3 or 4 or 5 time defending Bundesliga champion in Bayern Munich, and then he came to City with all the money in the world and a couple of titles already in the bag, and he's won them a couple more, to be fair to him, but he's not elevated them to a new level, which was what the expectation was for him coming. And so he might look at it and say, well, I'm not going to meet that objective. I'm not the guy to build again for 2 or 3 years down the road. Might just be time to walk away. So I don't think it's going to happen soon or first, maybe this season, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on if their season continues to kind of go in the way that it is.
Yeah, Pep Guardiola, not a name that I would have picked out right away, but that's a really interesting point. Nick Mendola, I know maybe on the other side of Manchester, you're maybe a bit concerned about what's going on there.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you what, especially because the other 2 clubs that I think are in trouble have club legends at the helm. Call it the Eddie Howe effect, but with Sean Dyche and Chris Wilder. I'm worried about those teams, but those coaches aren't in trouble. If anyone's going to get them out of it, it's them. So I look at Manchester United, and I would say he's in trouble and under pressure, but you look at the releases on deadline day, the press releases from that club, and whether it was Pellistri or Cavani, it's all working with the manager. Once I talked to the manager. So clearly, at least the comms team has his back, right? Like they're propping him up there. But I look at them early this season, granted they had that slow start. I believe in Marcus Rashford. He's been way off his game, though. I don't know how much I believe about Martial. He's been way off his game. If you look at some of these player rating services, they have 4 players in the top 200. Bruno's out of this world. Let's be honest. Bruno's having as good of a season as just about anyone outside of Calvert-Lewin and Kane and Son. But then it's McTominay, Lindelof, and Fosu Mensah. So this is a team that is woefully underperforming. Maybe that's a sign that it's going to turn around, but how's it going to turn around? And I can't help but think it should be cued into their manager.
I agree with that. And I think, Ollie, he maybe isn't all down to him. We spoke about this in the past. He hasn't been maybe backed as much as he should have been, especially this summer. in the previous window, he got Bruno Fernandes and obviously
and Harry Maguire and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who he's not even playing all the time.
So that it's a bit confusing from his point of view, but I think he's running out of time and running out of goodwill. And we spoke about the nostalgia and the Ollie's a legend factor. That only buys you so much time. We're coming up for, 2 years now since he came in on an interim basis. So it's kind of time. It's kind of time to really say you're going to stick or you're going to twist.
Well, isn't it the worst thing that keeps happening to the club is that he kind of keeps having halfway success? If he would just be really poor for a full season and it would bear out at the end, they could say, okay, this is just not working. But he did what he did, taking over interim and finished the season strong and then got him into Champions League. Again, you can't, as United, given where they've been the last few seasons, you can't look at that and say, okay, that's not good enough for us. We're not thankful for that and we're going to get rid of you. You can't do that at that point. And so if they would just fall flat once, they could then make the big change that I think they need to do.
I think for Ollie, he's probably going to end up finishing 7 or 8 this season and maybe get to the Champions League semi-final. That's kind of the way it's been going. Like get to a semi-final, lose, kind of that glorious failure. That's kind of just keeping him in the job. I worry about Scott Parker, a guy I'm going to bring up on the hot seat. I don't think he deserves to be there, but I think the sounds and the noises coming out of Fulham from him against Tony Khan, the co-owner, and some of the tweets that have been going around. And, Khan's been outspoken. A lot of fans like that. Parker didn't really seem to agree with it after the defeat of Aston Villa. The transfer window was underwhelming for me. We already talked about that in my transfer grades last week. And I don't think he deserves to get fired because he did a great job to get them promoted at the first time of asking back to the Premier League. But I just think if you get to December and January and Fulham are cut adrift, then it might just be better for both parties to move on. And then, hey, maybe Ranieri will turn up at Craven Cottage again. Who knows? But it's going to be interesting because there's a lot of managers now I think will be cut more slack because, as you guys have said, short summer, not much of a pre-season, transfer window is all wedged in. It's difficult. And, do clubs really want to pay off managers now who are on long-term contracts? Financially, can they do that and bring in someone else on higher wages? The big clubs can, sure, but lower down the table, I'm not too sure that's going to happen.
Do we not think that maybe with Fulham specifically, as a specific example with Parker, that maybe just keeping him there would be the right move? Because I think you can look at their first 4 games and say, they're going down. There's almost zero chance of them staying up. They might push Derby County for the all-time lowest points total in the league. Yeah. And at that point, is it really all down to the manager? 1, I think, is the first question. And then 2 is, does changing the manager again as you go down or before you go down fix anything? Does it help at all? Or is he very well proven at the championship level that he can get you right back up? And if you can keep some of that same squad together. So, maybe he survives just on a long-term play if he can, kind of patch things up with Tony Khan. I think that would be the only one.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the final part of this segment. Lads, this is your chance now to revise one of your preseason predictions. So we posted a roundtable post before the season started. Maybe we were giddy just to have the new season, but some pretty wild takes out there. I'm going to revise one of mine first, and that is that we were asked, will Manchester United finish in the top 3? And I obviously said that they would. And I want to quote something I said. I think they will continue to improve at the back. Yeah, that's not going great after that defeat against Tottenham. But I looked at it. I spoke to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the end of Project Restart, and we were chatting about defensively. That kind of went under the radar, right? They're so good going forward with Rashford, Fernandes, Martial, Greenwood came to life over the summer. They kept a huge amount of clean sheets down the stretch last season to finish in the top 4 and get to the Europa League the latter stages of that competition. So I don't know what's happened defensively, but for me, I've seen enough to think that Man United aren't going to finish in the top 4, let alone in the top 3. So
wow.
Quickly, lads, one sort of thing you'd like to revise from the early season predictions.
Sure. I'll tell you what, a little bit of humble bragging. Got to be honest. I said Everton could challenge for the top 6, but that the biggest question mark was whether or not Mason Holgate and Dominic Calvert-Lewin could take big enough steps to get it done. I thought they'd get better, especially looking at what Calvert-Lewin did last year under Ancelotti. I didn't think he'd start looking like Sheffield's answer to Robert Lewandowski. I mean, he's been unbelievable. So I was wrong in that was my question mark. But I did also say that Jordan Pickford would continue to be a problem. They've signed Robin Olsen on loan. And I'll add this into the equation. Andy mentioned that Manchester United, or maybe it was you, Joe, that he always has that moment, Solskjaer, where he kind of rescues himself and gives himself a few weeks. And of course, Jordan Pickford gets a win over Belgium to let everybody think that he's so good for England. It's insane. And goes back to Everton and can't do it. So he's now my biggest question. But again, looking at what they've done, and Hamas looking like a freed man, like this free beast, like he's been uncaged, makes me think, with especially with no European football, that's a top 4 team.
Andy, what about you?
I feel pretty good about kind of where teams are going to finish the season. I think we should all probably hold our hands up and say, well, maybe we got that one wrong on our Golden Boot prediction. We all 3 went for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and he currently has 1 goal through the first 4 games of the season. So he could get hot, and he could surely catch up. But you've got a couple guys now sitting on 6 already in Son Heung-min and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I would back Son, if he stays healthy, to continue to score throughout the season, given the talent that is now around him in that attack for Spurs. So I think he's got staying power at the top. Calvert-Lewin, remains to be seen just a little bit. Jamie Vardy with 5, Mohamed Salah with 5 as well. So maybe Vardy falls away just a little bit because he's not getting shots from open play. I think 4 of those 5 goals are from the penalty spot. He's taken just a handful of shots from open play, which is a bit of a worry for Leicester, who I thought had the best chance of kind of those middling teams of making a push towards the top 6 or 4 this season. So maybe got that a little bit wrong. And I think to top it off, I put Paul Pogba in my team of the year. Not going so great so far.
No, not great. And I'm sure, lads, we'll want to revise these preseason predictions pretty much every week here on out, because it's been so crazy for the first month of the season.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe. Make sure you subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and always join us every weekend at 7 a.m. on NBCSN for Premier League mornings. Plus, make sure you subscribe to Peacock Premium as well, where you can watch exclusively live 175 games and same-day on-demand replays of all 380 Premier League matches as well.